Today on How It's Made, bandsaw boxes. Decorative boxes made from laminated wood and cut on a bandsaw make wonderful keepsakes as gifts for friends or family, or to be sold in craft shows. The first step is selecting the right wood for the shade of color and the type of grain desired. Typical choices are walnut, oak, cherry, cedar, or ash, or combinations thereof. The planks need to be plain so that their surfaces can be glued flat against each other. Next, the wood is taken to a table saw and 8 to 10 inch sections are marked off, depending on how long the finished box is going to be, and allowing for a little extra cutting room. After the wood is cut, the wood sections are then stacked in whatever order creates the most visually appealing arrangement, as dictated by the direction and size of grain, color shading, and other considerations. The individual sections are then glued together, making sure that the glue is spread completely and evenly across the entire surface of each panel. There's no need to be too concerned about drip out since the ends will be cut off. The glued panels are carefully lined up and clamped together with several clamps and allowed to dry for 2 full days before continuing the work on the box construction. After the clamps are removed, a pattern containing the design for the box is printed out and a coating of multi-purpose spray adhesive is applied to the back. The pattern is then carefully applied to the panel that will become the front face of the box. Next, a bandsaw is used to cut out the outline of the perimeter of the box, being careful to keep the saw blade aligned with the lines on the pattern and to follow the precise radius of the curved sections. The excess material is removed and set aside for later use. A 1/4 to 3/8 inch thick slice is removed from the back of the box. This panel will be set to a side now and glued back on later. Now the individual drawer sections can be cut out using the same procedure as was used to cut out the perimeter of the box. This can be a bit more challenging as trying to keep within the lines and not cut past them becomes more critical as the working space narrows. Now that the drawers are cut out, the pattern is no longer needed and is removed by wiping it with a cloth dipped in mineral spirits and peeling it off. With the drawer blocks cut out, a 1/4 inch front and back panel is cut from each one, making sure to label which panel goes with which drawer after all of them are cut. With the box ends removed, the box cavity or drawer space is created by removing excess material from the interior of the blocks. To do this, lines are drawn as a guide on the side of each drawer, and then a bandsaw is used to carefully cut away the waste material. Next, the drawer interior surfaces are sanded down using progressively finer sandpaper ending up with 220 grit. Now, the box rear panel that was set aside is glued back on to the main box section and is clamped and allowed to dry. The drawer end panels are then glued back onto each drawer, making sure that they are mated properly, and also making sure that any glue squeeze out is wiped off with a damp cloth. Then the glued drawers are clamped and allowed to dry. Scrap cut-off pieces of the laminated wood that were previously set aside are used to cut out and form the drawer handles for the box. Patterns are cut out and glued as before and cut out on a bandsaw. The handle sections are positioned, glued, and clamped to the appropriate drawers and allowed to dry. Any small cracks are filled with a wood filler made from mixing a small amount of glue with some leftover sawdust until the mixture forms a smooth paste. That way, the filler matches the wood being used and effectively covers up small imperfections. With all the building blocks of the box completed, it's now time to start the tedious job of sanding down all the surfaces. Progressive sanding starts with a Dremel tool equipped with either a sanding sleeve or a cylindrical grinding bit to round off all the box edges. Progressive sanding, starting with either an 80 grit or 150 grit sandpaper, is used, progressing to a 220 grit paper. To make the job easier, the sandpaper is sometimes wrapped around a foam block to make it easier to follow the contours of the wood. When the sanding is completed, the box pieces are immersed in water and allowed to dry. The absorption of the water allows the wood fibers to expand, which creates a rough surface that will then need to be sanded once again with 220 grit sandpaper. Now the box is ready to receive a finish. The first step is by applying a fast-drying coat of lacquer sanding sealer, which will add a layer of protection and help provide a smooth finish. When the sealer coat is dried, the box is given one final once-over with 220 grit sandpaper and wiped down with a rag. Several coats of lacquer in either satin, semi-gloss, or gloss finish are applied, allowing ample time in between for each to dry. After the fourth or fifth coat has been applied, it will be allowed to dry and the surface inspected for final approval. The total process from beginning to end has taken several hours and a couple of days, but the quality of the finished product is well worth it. Our bandsaw box is finally ready for a special buyer or to give as a unique keepsake to friends or family.